The leather reins slipped through Jack Morrison's calloused hands as he stared at the young woman standing in his barn doorway, her white dress gleaming like fresh snow against the dusty Wyoming sunset. He'd heard some strange requests in his 47 years of ranching, but this one stopped him cold. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said carefully, removing his Stetson. "Could you repeat that?" Emma Chen's dark eyes were steady, unwavering. "I need the full 11 inches, Mr. Morrison. Nothing less will do." Jack felt heat crawl up his neck. His ranch hands had stopped working, frozen mid-motion like statues in the gathering dusk. The bride, because that's what she clearly was, judging by the elaborate dress and veil, stood with her chin raised, determined despite the tremble in her voice that betrayed her nervousness. "Miss, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding." Emma stepped forward, her dress trailing through the hay. "My grandmother told me that if I ever needed help, truly needed it, I should come to Jack Morrison's ranch and ask for the full 11 inches. She said you'd know what it meant. She said you'd understand." The name hit Jack like a physical blow. "Your grandmother?" "Mei Chen. Mei Lin, before she married my grandfather." Jack's weathered face went pale. The reins fell completely from his hands. Mei. Sweet Mei, who'd worked in his father's house 60 years ago, who'd been like family when Jack was just a boy learning to ride. Mei, who'd disappeared one terrible winter when Jack was 12, and his father had refused to speak of her again. "Mei's granddaughter," he whispered. Then, louder, with sudden urgency, "Get inside. Now." The ranch hands exchanged glances as Jack ushered Emma into the main house, away from curious eyes. Once inside, he poured her a glass of water with shaking hands and sat down heavily across from her. "Tell me everything." Emma's story came out in a rush. Her wedding was supposed to be tomorrow, a marriage she'd reluctantly agreed to in order to save her family's failing restaurant in San Francisco. Her parents had borrowed money from the wrong people, and the debt had become crushing. A wealthy developer had offered to clear everything in exchange for her hand in marriage. She'd said yes, believing she had no choice. But yesterday, going through her late grandmother's belongings, she'd found a letter. Grandmother Mei wrote that she'd once been in an impossible situation, and your father saved her. She said the Morrison family kept something for her, something valuable that she could never reclaim because she'd been forced to flee Wyoming. She wrote that if any of her descendants ever needed help, we should ask for the full 11 inches and trust that you would honor your father's promise. Jack closed his eyes, memories flooding back. His father, stern but just, coming home late one winter night with Mei bundled in blankets, her face bruised, fleeing from a violent situation. The whispered conversations. His father telling young Jack to fetch something from the safe, a long, slender package wrapped in oilcloth, exactly 11 inches in length. Your grandmother, Jack said slowly, was running from a man who wanted to force her into marriage. My father helped her escape and kept something safe for her, a jade hair ornament that had been in her family for generations. She couldn't take it with her because the man was searching for anything valuable she might use. My father promised to guard it until she could return safely. But she never came back, Emma said softly. No. She never came back. And when she didn't, my father made me promise something. Jack stood and walked to an old painting on the wall, a Wyoming landscape his mother had loved. He swung it aside to reveal a small safe. He made me swear that if Mei or any of her family ever came asking for the full 11 inches, I would give them what was theirs and help them however I could. He said a promise to Mei was worth more than gold. The safe clicked open. From inside, Jack withdrew a package wrapped in faded oilcloth, tied with string that had yellowed with age. He placed it gently in Emma's trembling hands. This has been waiting for your family for 60 years. Emma carefully unwrapped the package. Inside lay an exquisite jade hair ornament, 11 inches long, carved with intricate dragons and phoenixes. Even in the lamplight, it seemed to glow with inner fire. Emma gasped. It's priceless, she breathed. Grandmother always talked about the family treasure that was lost. We thought she meant metaphorically, our heritage, our courage. I never imagined. It's worth enough to pay your family's debts 3 times over, Jack said. But that's not all. My father didn't just keep this safe. He invested money in May's name, hoping she'd return. When she didn't, he kept the account growing, with instructions that it belonged to her or her descendants. He handed Emma a folder. There's a trust fund. It's not a fortune, but it's enough to give you real choices. Emma's hands shook as she looked at the papers, tears streaming down her face. I can save my family. I don't have to marry him. You never had to marry anyone, Jack said gently. You always had a choice. You just didn't know it yet. They talked long into the night. Jack called his lawyer, who confirmed everything could be arranged quickly. Emma called her parents, her voice breaking as she explained. Jack's wife, Maria, appeared with food and tissues, embracing this stranger like a daughter, the way the Morrison family had once embraced May. The next morning, instead of a wedding, Emma stood in Jack's ranch office, signing papers that would transfer her inheritance. The jade ornament sat beside her, a symbol of promises kept across generations. Why? Emma asked Jack as she prepared to leave. Why did your father care so much? Why did you honor a promise to someone you barely remembered? Jack looked out the window at the land he loved, the mountains rising purple in the distance. My father used to say that integrity isn't about the promises that are easy to keep. It's about the ones that cost you nothing but honor, the ones nobody would ever know about if you broke them. He taught me that who we are isn't measured by what we do when people are watching, but by what we do when no one would ever know the difference. Someone would have known, Emma said quietly. You would have known. Exactly. As Emma's car pulled away, heading back toward a future she could now choose freely, Jack's youngest ranch hand approached him. Boss, I don't understand. You kept that valuable ornament for 60 years. You could have sold it any time. Nobody would have known. Jack smiled, settling his Stetson back on his head. I would have known. And more importantly, I wouldn't have seen the look on that young woman's face when she realized that kindness echoes across generations, that a good deed never really dies. Some things are worth more than gold, son. Some things are worth everything. That evening, Jack received a text from Emma. She'd confronted her would-be groom, paid her family's debts, and enrolled in culinary school, her real dream. Her parents were crying with joy. She attached a photo, the jade ornament, now displayed in their restaurant, with a plaque honoring May Lynn and the Morrison family. Jack showed the photo to Maria, who squeezed his hand. Your father would be proud. He gave me something worth more than this ranch, Jack said. He gave me the understanding that we're all links in a chain of kindness. What we do today echoes in tomorrow. The full 11 inches wasn't just about an ornament. It was about measuring up to the full length of our character, giving everything we promised, being exactly who we say we are. Outside, the Wyoming stars blazed in an endless sky, watching over a ranch where promises were kept, where kindness was currency, and where one family's integrity had just changed another family's destiny, proving that the truest treasures we can leave behind aren't measured in acres or gold, but in the promises we keep and the lives we touch along the way. 3 months had passed since Emma Chen left the Morrison ranch with her grandmother's jade ornament and a restored future. Jack had returned to his quiet life of cattle, hay bales, and the endless rhythm of ranch work. He thought about Emma sometimes, wondering how she was doing, but he never expected to see her again. That's why he nearly dropped his coffee mug when a caravan of 3 cars rolled up his dirt driveway on a crisp October morning. Emma emerged from the first vehicle, but she wasn't alone. An elderly couple stepped out behind her, the woman moving slowly with a cane, her face weathered but eyes bright with emotion. Emma's parents followed, along with 2 younger people Jack didn't recognize. They all stood in a semicircle, looking at him with expressions that made his chest tighten. Mr. Morrison, Emma said, her voice thick with emotion. I'd like you to meet some people. This is my Aunt Linda and Uncle Thomas, and these are my cousins, Michael and Sarah. Jack shook hands, confused but welcoming. It's good to meet you all, but I don't understand. Jack Morrison. The elderly woman stepped forward, her eyes glistening with tears. She reached up with a trembling hand and touched his face. You look so much like your father. So very much like him. Jack's heart stopped. He knew that voice, older, weathered by time, but unmistakable. May. Yes, Jack. It's me. The world seemed to tilt. Jack reached out to steady himself against the porch railing. Mei Lin, whom he'd last seen as a young woman fleeing into the night, now stood before him as a grandmother herself, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. You were just a boy, Mei whispered. Just 12 years old, bringing me blankets and hot soup while your father made arrangements for my escape. Do you remember? I remember, Jack said hoarsely. I remember everything. We thought, after you left, when you never came back, we thought maybe something had happened to you. May's face crumpled. I wanted to come back. For years, I wanted to return, to thank your father, to reclaim my grandmother's ornament. But I was afraid. The man I was fleeing had connections, and I'd built a new life in California. I married a good man, had children. I convinced myself that the ornament was gone, that the past was best left buried. She wiped her eyes. When your father died, I read about it in a newspaper someone sent me. I wept for days. I'd never had the courage to thank him properly. Jack's own eyes were burning now. He never forgot you, May. Never. He kept that ornament polished and protected until the day he died. Then he made me promise to do the same. Emma told me everything, May said. About the trust fund, the money your father invested in my name. Jack, do you understand what that means? Your father took his own money and set it aside for decades, for someone who never came back. Who does that? Someone who makes a promise and keeps it, Jack said simply. Someone who believes in doing what's right, even when it's hard. Emma stepped forward. Mr. Morrison, after I settled our family's debts and enrolled in culinary school, I told grandmother everything. She was so shocked, she thought the ornament was lost forever. When she learned what your family had done, what you protected all these years, she insisted on coming here. She's been planning this for weeks. May reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph, yellowed with age. It showed Jack's father, young and strong, standing beside a teenage May in front of this very ranch house. Jack had never seen this picture before. Your father gave me this the night I left, May explained. He said, remember that there are good people in the world, May. Remember that you deserve kindness. He saved my life, Jack. Not just by helping me escape, but by showing me that I was worth saving. Jack took the photograph with shaking hands, studying his father's face, so young, so earnest. Thank you for keeping this. I have something else for you, May said. She nodded to Emma, who retrieved a large box from one of the cars. We've spent the last 3 months preparing this. Emma opened the box carefully. Inside were dozens of folders, photographs, and documents. After grandmother told us the full story, we started researching your father's life. We contacted people who knew him, collected stories, gathered photographs. We wanted to create something that honored what he did, not just for our family, but for everyone he helped. May pulled out a leather-bound book. Your father helped more people than just me, Jack. We found 12 other families, people he'd given jobs to when they had nothing, immigrants he'd sponsored, families he'd helped during the Depression. We interviewed them all, collected their stories. This is his legacy. Jack opened the book with trembling hands. Page after page documented his father's quiet acts of kindness, people helped, lives changed, promises kept. There were photographs, letters, testimonials from people Jack had never met, all telling stories he'd never heard. I never knew, Jack whispered. He never talked about any of this. Because truly good people don't, May said gently. They just do what's right and move on. But their actions ripple forward through time, touching lives in ways they never see. Emma's father stepped forward. Mr. Morrison, we also wanted to thank you. Not just for keeping the ornament safe, but for teaching Emma something crucial, that integrity matters, that promises should be kept, that kindness is never wasted. After she paid our debts, Emma didn't have to help us further. But she did. She used part of the trust fund to renovate our restaurant, to hire staff, to create jobs for other immigrant families struggling like we were. And it's thriving now, Emma added, beaming. We named it May's Table in grandmother's honor. But inside, there's a plaque that tells the full story, about your father, about promises kept, about kindness that echoes across generations. People come from all over San Francisco to see it, to hear the story. Jack felt overwhelmed, his throat tight with emotion. I just did what my father taught me. Exactly, May said. And that's why we're really here. Jack, you have children, grandchildren? 3 kids, 7 grandchildren, Jack confirmed. Then they need to know this story. They need to understand what their great-grandfather started, what their grandfather continued. Because this, May gestured to the assembled family members, to the book of stories, to the legacy surrounding them, this is what happens when one person decides to be good, truly good, even when no one's watching. It spreads like ripples in water, touching shores you'll never see. Emma's cousin Michael spoke up. Mr. Morrison, I'm starting a non-profit organization dedicated to helping young people escape forced marriages and domestic violence. Emma's story inspired me. I'm naming it, the Full 11 Inches Foundation, because we want to give people the full measure of help they need, holding nothing back, just like your father did. Sarah, the other cousin, added, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. With your permission, I'd like to tell this story, not just your father's kindness, but how it changed our entire family tree. How one act of goodness in 1965 led to all of us standing here today, living free, purposeful lives. Jack looked around at these faces, 3 generations of the family his father had saved, all thriving, all giving back to the world. His father had protected one woman and one heirloom, and from that single act had grown this forest of goodness. He would have said he didn't do anything special, Jack said quietly. But he did, May insisted. He saw someone in trouble and helped, expecting nothing in return. And you did the same for Emma. Do you know how rare that is? Do you understand how many people would have sold that ornament, kept the money, rationalized that no one would ever come looking for it? Jack invited them all inside, and they spent the afternoon together. May walked through the ranch house, touching things she remembered from 60 years ago, telling stories about Jack's father that made him see the man in a new light. Emma's family shared a meal they'd brought, traditional dishes from May's childhood, recipes that had been passed down and preserved. As the sun began to set, painting the Wyoming sky in shades of amber and rose, May took Jack's hands in hers. Thank you for being your father's son. Thank you for showing Emma, showing all of us, that good people still exist, that promises still matter, that integrity isn't just an old-fashioned word. What will you do with the jade ornament? Jack asked. Emma answered, it's on permanent display at May's table, but grandmother has decided something.